चिन्तयामि हरिमेव सन्ततं मन्दमन्दहसिताननाम्बुजम् नन्दगोपतनयं परात्परम् नारदादिमुनिवृन्दवन्दितम्। Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In this beautiful chapter of Dhyana Yoga, we have been seeing Bhagavan Sri Krishna guiding us on the rather difficult topic, meditation. It is difficult, though it is very popular. Everybody talks about meditation, but very few are really able to meditate the right way. And the topic becomes all the more difficult when we are considering the context of Vedanta meditation. For the issue is, can one meditate at all unless one has done Shravana and Manana? Unless one has a good grasp of the teachings of the Upanishads, that is Vedanta, on what one's true nature is, how can one meditate on one's true nature? Will not one simply be pursuing some imagination? Is one meditating on the truth, or is one meditating on some concept created by one's own mind? Such questions arise. Therefore, there is sometimes a debate between the importance of study and the importance of meditation. Some say we must study and study so that there is adequate clarity. Then they claim meditation just happens. Some others say going on studying will trap you in more and more words, and then you will become more entangled in logic, in language, and so on. You will not have the skill of calming your mind. Therefore, do not delay meditation. Meditate more and more and study a little. So should we study more and meditate a little, or should we meditate more and study a little? And on top of all this, there is the issue of one's temperament, one's adhikara, one's fitness, one's mental or intellectual makeup. Some who are not so suited to study may get sleep if they try to study more and more. And some who are not so suited to meditation may get sleep when they try to meditate. When they try to study, they may be in high spirits. Therefore, the topic is not as easy as it would first appear, and each camp has some valid point. Therefore, without going long on this, we must, in a manner of summarizing, we must decide our path, decide our sadhana with enhanced or increased understanding of our nature and the nature of the sadhanas being proposed. There is no denying that meditation is a very valuable exercise. There is no denying that studying with competent guidance is a very valuable exercise. And there is no denying that everything is truly fruitful if one knows oneself. I'm not talking of the absolute pure self, I'm talking of oneself meaning one's own personality. How far one is emotional, how far one is intellectual, how far one is extrovert, how far one is driven to work in the world, how far one is interested in yogic exercises. There are lots of things one has to figure out by trial and error, and above all, by being very honest to oneself. Honesty and patience are required in these matters. Otherwise, a whole lifespan may just pass before one realizes what the right way for one is. We had gone up to the verse number 30. We read, in fact, the verse 30, and there was a beautiful pointer. We will see the Bhāshya now. The shloka goes, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvancha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati. Having talked about meditation in about 20 verses, Bhagavan Sri Krishna arrives at the point where he describes the highest state of consciousness where a meditator arrives. In this high state, the meditator sees God everywhere and everything in God. Yaha sarvatra mam pashyati and sarvam mai pashyati. Seeing me everywhere and seeing sarvam, everything in me. And then the second half of the shloka says, when that is the state of consciousness, God will never be away for the seeker, and the seeker is never away from God. Pranashyati literally means perishes or is lost. Nasha, pranasha is destruction, loss. And the shloka in its second half says, Aham na pranashyami, I am never lost, and he or she, the seeker, is never lost. So leave aside this destruction or loss. What it implies in the present context is the beholding, the understanding, or having insight. You never lose sight of God, and God never loses sight of you. That means you and God are constantly, forever together. So let's see how Sri Shankaracharya throws light on this very sweet and yet deeply significant sloka. Yaha mam pashyati. Yo mam pashyati. So what does mam mean here? He who sees me. What is meant by this me? Shankaracharya is rightly regarded as carrying jnana and bhakti together on the very high plane of Advaita. Here it is evident. Acharya Shankara says, Mam means Vasudevam. Vasudeva is a word which has both the personal and impersonal aspect of Godhead. If you take Vasudeva as son of Vasudeva, Vasudevasya apatyam Kumar. Vasudeva is how grammar describes the word Vasudeva. Vasudevasya apatyam means child. Apatyam means the progeny, the offspring. Vasudevasya apatyam. The offspring could be male or female. Therefore, one more word is added in the standard grammatical elaboration of such words. Vasudevasya apatyam Kumar, the male child of Vasudeva and Devaki. So that is a personal description, personified description. God is looked at as a person. Then the other word or other meaning, Vasu means or Vasu means Vasati. One who dwells, one who lives, one who resides in every one of us. Vasati iti Vasuhu and Divyati iti Devaha. Shining principle. So that shining principle in all creation, Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanushu, Prota Jagat Sakshini, as Manisha Panchakam puts it. There is a certain samvit, certain principle of pure consciousness, which is in fact the witness of the entire universe, Jagat Sakshini. Brahma Adi Pipilikanta Tanushu. In the bodies of the four-faced Brahma, one of the Trinity, from there all the way till a crawling ant. Pipilika. Pipilika is an ant. A little ant that keeps moving can go hundreds of miles. Even the powerful Garuda, the mighty bird, suppose does not move, does not even go 10 feet. Gachan pipiliko yati yojananam shatanyapi agachan vainateyopi padamekam na gacchati. It's a subhashita on the plane of dharma, on the plane of noble values. Subhashita urges us, work, act, do what can be done, do what is in your hands. Don't stay back, don't sit back, don't lie idle. An ant also, as it keeps moving, goes very far. And if you don't move, you just sit worrying, then like Garuda, who might not move and would not therefore go distances, you would just stay. You would just deteriorate. Anyway, coming back, Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanushu Rota Jagat Sakshini, says Manisha Panchakam. That is Vasudeva. Sarveshu Bhuteshu Vasati Divyati Cha. Divyati is a verbal root. It is the representative of what we call the Chaturtha Gana, fourth conjugation. Fourth conjugation. There are 10 ganas in Sanskrit. Divyadi is how the fourth gana is called. Who is the foremost representative of the first conjugation? Therefore, it is called Bhu Adi, Vadi. And like that, all the 10 have representatives. So, Div is the root behind Deva, a shining principle of consciousness pervading the entire universe. That would be the impersonal interpretation of the word Vasudeva. One who sees Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, everywhere, personal interpretation, impersonal interpretation, he or she who sees the shining principle of consciousness everywhere. Shankara himself says, Sarvasya Atmanam Sarvatra means Sarveshu Bhuteshu. On one hand, thus seeing the divine principle in everyone, and then seeing everything or everybody or everyone in God or in that pure consciousness. Sarvancha Brahmadi Bhuta Jatam. The word Jatam here means the category. Vriksha Jatam means all trees. Prani Jatam means all animals or all living beings. So Jata in Sanskrit somewhere else may mean born. Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityu, dhruvam mrityu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha, we have seen in chapter 2. So here Jatam means Varga or category. Brahmadi Bhuta Vargam. Starting with Brahma, going to even the tiniest creature, bacteria or virus or whatever. All of them are in consciousness. Mai sarvatmani pashyati. Thus, when we say all waves are in water and water is in all waves, what is implied is the waves and water are not two different things. You want to see water? Look at the waves. You want to see waves? Look at this water body. Therefore, jale tarangaha tarangeshu jalam iti kaha artaha jalameva tarangaha tarangaha eva jalam. Thus, that supreme consciousness itself is every one of us, and every one of us is oneself, that supreme consciousness, but the difficulty is hardly anyone sees it. Through study coupled with meditation, through meditation rightly informed by study, one arrives at that ability to see. Therefore, two places in Bhagavad Gita you have that expression, Yap Pashyati Sapashyati. One who sees, sees. Why is it said in that rather strange way? Yap Pashyati Sapashyati. Because how one comes upon such a extraordinary vision is difficult to see. Yap Pashyati Sapashyati. Kaha Pashyati? Who sees? Rather than saying a tall man sees, a short man sees, a brown man sees, a white man sees, a spectacled lady sees, or a PhD, lady with a PhD in biochemistry sees. No, it has nothing to do with being tall or short or brown or white or lady or man or PhD or 10th standard fail. No. Then who sees? Kaha pashyati? The answer is, since no other description can fit in here, well, she sees who sees. Yap pashyati sapashyati. A friend of mine in San Francisco Bay Area has launched a podcast series, and he has named it Ravi Ranganathan, who has been studying Vedanta with several Swamis from 1980s. When I lived in San Jose in the mid-90s, he used to come for classes. And now he is in his retired life, he is inspired to share his joy in Bhagavad Gita with people anywhere in the world. If you start a podcast, I'm not sure whether many of you are familiar with podcast. In your smartphone, you can install Spotify. There are several such softwares, apps. One of them is Spotify. If it is an iPhone, there is an app readily upon it called Podcast. Podcast is the name. So podcast could be the app on your iPhones. If you are an Android phone, then it's called Spotify. Then there are some others. That's free. Once you install a podcast player like podcast or Spotify, unbelievable. You have access to millions of podcasts on all subjects. It's typically audio, but there are video podcasts also, but generally it is audio. So you may go to Ravi Ranganathan's podcast. Many episodes are readily available. And it is called Yap Pashyati Sapashya. So many gurus, so many teachers, so many Christian ministers, Zen guides, of course, Swamis, some institutions, this church and that Jewish synagogue, all of them have a podcast, not to mention the entertainment industry. Or you want some podcasts on psychology, you want podcasts of Harvard Business School, you want some podcast of Stanford Management School. There are podcasts by professors, by Tom, Dick, and Harry. To avoid gender bias, I add. There are podcasts by Sita, Geeta, and Neeta. Everyone. Anyway, Yap Pashyati Sapashyati. I had the opportunity to review or go through a couple of his episodes and encourage him. He is going strong. So, it's so difficult to say who comes upon this liberating vision. Though the Shastras do say, Atmava are shrotavyaha, mantavyaha, nididhyasitavyaha, all that is said. And we trust it, we believe in it. We don't think that self-realization is an accident. We do value sincere self-application. That's how we are here at these classes. Though it is so difficult to predict who gains that extraordinary insight, samyak darshana. An 8-year-old child may have that vision. Mata Amritanandamayi was a little girl belonging to a so-called low caste, not gone to school beyond 4th grade, and troubled and tortured by the family for being different from others, that little girl growing up in Kerala. But she had vision. She would go into samadhi. She would fall into a river, almost unconscious. They thought some ghost had entered into her. They tried to exorcise the ghost, take the ghost out of her by beating her up, and lots of things. She suffered so much. But then a day came when everybody understood that this girl, Sudhamani, her name was Sudhamani. It's a beautiful video, short video on her life, very inspiring. Sudhamani then was understood finally. I think a cousin of hers told her family in those bad days, what? She doesn't listen to anybody? I will make her understand. And he came with something like an iron rod and wanted to beat her. A very immature fellow. He thought with an iron rod he would beat her once and then she would learn to behave properly, because they took her to be misbehaving and crazy and mad and abnormal, all that they thought. And that is also shown in that movie, that documentary sort of, where someone has acted as Sudamani. Sudamani was meditating. His cousin comes with a big iron rod and is all set to strike her. Lord Krishna protects Sudamani like he protected Draupadi from Dushasana. So, even as he is about to strike, exactly at that moment, he gets a paralytic stroke. He stands frozen there and is unable to move his hand. I guess with her compassion and her grace, he becomes all right afterwards. Anyway, let me not get into a diversion. That 8 or 10-year-old girl beholds Sri Krishna everywhere and everything in Sri Krishna. By the way, I may even say, if any of you thinks you have been misunderstood by all, you have been ill-treated by people, you have been not given the due regard, you have been talked about in negative ways everywhere. Maybe you are a Sudhamani about to emerge as an enlightened one. Do not worry about how people treat you, how your own parents treat you, how your own cousins and brothers or somebody treats you. Never mind. However, introspect. Have I acted wrongly? Have I spoken wrongly? Have I behaved carelessly? So, we always trust the path laid out by the scriptures. And if there is an exception, the young boy Venkataraman never studied Shankara Bhāshya, did not go to Sanskrit grammar schools, but he got enlightened apparently at the age of 17, became Ramana Maharshi. Sudamani was enlightened at the age of 10 or 12, and there are other cases. Well, with due respect to all those cases, you and I do not expect something like that to happen on its own. We study. We try to discipline ourselves. Even when we recognize we have fallen 1,000 times, we say, let me get up. Let me stand up and walk again. That is our approach. So here Sri Krishna talks about Tasya. Tasya is the word from the shloka. To that person, man or woman, who is that man or woman? Atma ekatva darshinaha. That man or woman is a darshi. If it's a lady, darshini. Samyak darshi is the man. Samyak darshini is the woman. So, the language used is in masculine. Please bear with that. It doesn't mean a man only. Atma ekatva darshi tasya darshinaha aham ishvaraha na pranashyami. I would never, Shankara doesn't translate it as nasham gacchami, etc. That's not the meaning. Parokshatam na gacchami. Paroksha means, suppose you have a fruit right in your hand, an apple. And even as you are beholding it, it is not visible. Pratyaksha it was a moment ago and it became paroksha. Somebody reports, hey, an apple has come here in the next room. Really? Yeah, the apple in my hand vanished. You get a phone call. And you say, the apple is here, next room only. Talking of these mobiles and the wonder that they do. We have a Geetā student in Chicago called Shantala. Recently, she was on the front cover of Fortune magazine. She was once at a conference in Paris and she tried to reach somebody who lives in New York, something like that. She called him, hey Sam, I want to discuss something with you. And Sam also said to her, yes, Shantala, I wanted to discuss the same thing with you. And they began discussing some business matter. But down the road, after 5 minutes of discussion, Shantala said, Sam, by the way, where are you today? And he said, I wanted to ask you where you are today. So both of them then said, that was the high point. He said, I am in Paris attending such and such conference. Shantala said, I'm also at the same conference. You mean you are at this conference where I have come? He said, I didn't know you are at this conference. And as she narrated, some of us who heard it could not laugh. As even they came to understand that they were actually attending the same conference, then they realized Shantala was on the higher level of a staircase in that some hotel in Paris. And this Sam was at the bottom of that same staircase. They could see each other actually. But talking, imagining, Sam thought Shantala was in Chicago, where she has settled. And Shantala thought the Sam was that day in New York. Both of them were at the starting at the bottom or the ending at the top of the staircase, attending the same conference. They switched off the mobile and came face to face and continued their discussion. So, parokshatam gacchati, it's a good analogy for Brahma. Brahma is right here. But like one imagined the other was in New York, or the other imagined that this one was at Chicago, while actually both of them were just a few feet away at this conference venue in Paris. Like that, the journey of a seeker, you and me, is marked by years and years, lives and lives of imagining Atma Parokshaha. Atma is not Pratyaksha, not Aparoksha, but Paroksha, far away somewhere, right? So, Parokshatam aham na gamishyami. Sri Krishna says, I will not ever be far, be unseen. I will never be out of experience. I am ever intimately recognized, realized, sakshatkrita. There's a Swamiji in Rishikesh. His name is Sakshatkritananda. How nice, all these names. Maybe you can have a spiritual camp on names of various Swamis. Because in those names, Vedanta is conveyed. Gunatitananda, Jagadatmananda, Sakshatkritananda, Satananda, Chitananda, Anandananda, and Sachidananda. All of them are pointers to Brahma, right? So, Parokshatam, Gamishya. Okay, let's make it very simple. Sri Krishna says, one who has meditated and arrived at this clear vision never misses God, never loses sight of God, even for a moment. Radharanyaka has that mantra. What is that? Nahi drashtur drashtehe viparilopo bhavati. Viparilopa means a lapse. For a moment, imagine there is a lapse. Like they talk about missing heartbeats. One heartbeat is missed. In medicine, that's a serious scenario. Missing heartbeats. I remember when Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayanand was quite unwell towards the last days of his physical manifestation. He would be resting, let us say, at night in his bedroom, and they had some instrument, if I remember right. I can check with somebody who knew these matters better than I. But that's what I heard. There were two attendants, one or two attendants who would keep awake through the night, looking at that some kind of monitor. Some instrument was probably put up on his heart, his chest. So if there are a couple of missing beats, they would know sitting outside. He is sleeping. So that maybe for a few days they were attending to him so carefully. Because it was said that Swamiji's heart was functioning at 18% of normal, and yet he was going around and giving lectures. A few days before, 4 or 5 days before he breathed his last, he gave some lecture. He went from India to France, France to USA, then from the east coast to the west coast of USA, and it was in San Diego. They say, right? I must have said this before. Swami Chinmayanand was witty, good humored, even in his place he chose to so-called die. San Diego, I believe, I'm yet to verify that, means a place where saints die and go. San Diego. The spelling is S-A-N, saints, D-I-E, die, G-O, go. I don't know what it means in Spanish. As you know, San Jose means Saint Joseph. And if it's a lady, Santa Clara means Lady Saint Clara. There are so many, San Luis Obispo, and so many San, starting with San. So San Diego. So he was working almost till his last breath, right? So missing heartbeat. Today, one can, even from a distance, know whether some patient is having repeated missing heartbeats, which is an alarming scenario. So, Brihadaranyaka uses the word viparilopa. Lopa itself means a lapse. Nahi drashtur drashter viparilopa vidyate. Heart may lose a beat. Eyes may not be able to see for a couple of seconds. Sometimes you and I get a blurred vision and we think, what's happening? Then we regain our vision. We are fainting. So whatever. Any organ, for that matter, even the mind, the intellect, pranas, all of them may have a momentary lapse, or they may stop functioning. Not so with the pure self. And these enlightened ones are anchored in the pure self. Parokshatam, Ishvaraha parokshatam na gamishyati. And Ishvarasya sabhaktaha parokshatam na gamishyati. There's no question of this enlightened being not being in the sight of God. Sachamena pranashyati. So a simple example is given, or an analogy is given. A father and son, the son, 4-year-old boy, are walking by the beach, holding each other's hand. And in a loving, nice beach walk, the father doesn't let go of the son's hand, nor does the little son let go of the father's hand. They go. Such is that's a loving, devotional Bhakti Marga interpretation of this scenario. So in Bhakti Marga, you and I should tie ourselves to God in such a way that there is no question of God leaving us or us leaving Him. We go together. If at all there was at any time a sense of where is God, He has left me, that technically is to be called a misunderstanding. God never leaves you. You never leave Him. In that enlightened state, it becomes evident. Other time, it seems God has left you. It seems you have left God. Your hours of darkness, as some Christian priest wrote that poem or that famous classical work, The Dark Night of the Soul. There is some Christian classic. I don't know whether it's a whole book or a long poem. The Dark Night of the Soul. Google it up. It's held in high regard by Christian traditions. So, this is a very pretty verse. It can help us in both Jnana Yoga Sadhana and Bhakti Yoga Sadhana. Never imagine God is away. Sachamena pranashyati sacha vidwan mama vasudevasya. Again, Sri Krishna is described as Vasudeva. Ishvara, God, is Vasudeva. And na paroksha bhavati. Never is far. Tasya cha mama cha ekatmakatvat. Because the underlying secret here is God and man are not two. Adi Shankara brings out his Advaita card here. Those who don't believe in Advaita might feel very uncomfortable here. And that they will feel uncomfortable at many places. That's a different issue. But these are the places where Adi Shankara upholds Advaita. Saha na pranashyati mama aham tasya na pranashyami. For Adi Shankara is a pointer towards pure Advaita because tasya mamacha ekatmakatvat. He and I are one. If somebody were to say, you know, I had gone to New Jersey, I had gone to New Zealand, I had gone to Antarctica, and can you believe? I went there and found myself. You will laugh. You go there and you find yourself. What else would you expect? To go there, you expect to find what his name there. But not necessary. Well, let's say, I was trying to remember the very controversial president of the United States after Obama, but I'm not getting his name. Or take Obama himself. So you go to Antarctica and you expect to find Obama? You will find yourself. Wherever you go, you will find yourself. Right? Because you are yourself. So, tasya cha mama cha ekatmakatvat. There are no two. There is only one. And then comes a beautiful line again. Swatma hi nama atmanaha prakasha eva bhavati. I believe there is another version. Some of you may be holding the version of Shankara Bhāshya where instead of the word prakasha, there may be the word priya. I have the version where prakasha is given, but at the bottom, a footnote is given. Atmanaha priyaha eva bhavati is another version which is not acceptable. So the learned Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati emphatically says the correct version is Swatma Hinama Atmanaha Prakasha Eva Bhavati. These are places where if someone does not have much grip over Sanskrit, one may not understand it. Because Prakasha means light. So Atmanaha Prakasha, light of Atma, light of the pure self. No. The word Prakasha here means Gochara, visible. Prakasha means knowable, known. Like in the example I gave a while ago of the apple. Suddenly you see the apple has vanished. Then you may say, Tat phalam aprakasham abhavat. Was not visible. And a moment later, again you see the fruit right in your hand. It became visible. So becoming invisible is aprakasham or aprakashaha. And becoming visible is prakasham or prakashaha. Swatma hinama atmanaha prakashaha eva bhavati. After all, Swatma, one's own pure self, Atmanaha, to oneself, has to be evident. As I gave the example, you go to Antarctica, and suppose to put it slightly different way. You go to Antarctica, and then you take a look at your hand. I used to see this hand of mine when I was in Mumbai. I used to see this hand of mine when I was in Delhi. And now even in Antarctica, I am able to see this hand of mine. This hand of yours, how can you imagine you will leave it behind in Delhi or Bombay, Bangalore or Madras? In that case, it is a Anga Angi Bhava. You are the Angi and the hand is the Anga. But Atma is one step higher or all the way up. You are the Atma. Swa Atma Atmanaha Prakasha Eva Bhavati. In the analogy I gave, whether you go to the South Pole or the North Pole, wherever you go, your hand will be visible to your eyes because it's part of you. But in the theme proper, wherever you go, Swa Atma Atmanaha Prakashaha Bhavati. Perhaps that is how a certain saint who is in Kurukshetra in Haryana once said, बोध को बोध का बोध होता है, he said in Hindi. Bodh is this principle of consciousness. To that principle of consciousness, the truth of consciousness becomes evident. All three called Bodh. Svatma hinama atmanaha prakashaha eva bhavati. In fact, in the translation that Sachidanandendra Saraswati makes, he puts it in an interrogative form. Should not the self of oneself be evident to one? Should it not be evident? He puts it in the form of a question. Though in the, in Sanskrit, in the good old days, the question mark was not part of written manuscripts. So probably in the Bhāshya proper also, since question mark is never used, only that vertical line implying full stop is used. A question, and the question is implied perhaps, because in the Anuvada, in Kannada, he makes it a question. Should not the pure self be ever available, ever visible, ever discernible, ever present to oneself? So Swatma Atmanaha Prakasha. So just keep in mind, all prakasha here means visible. You hold a pencil in your hand and you say, this pencil is prakasha to me. Somebody just takes it away. Where did the pencil go? The pencil is not prakasha to me. Prakasha means visible. Therefore, last sentence of the Bhashya, yasmacha ahameva sarvatmaikatvadarshi ityetat. Therefore, and therefore, cha, one more reason is, the one who sees and the one who is seen are one only. There are no two. There is no duality whatsoever, is the point emphasized here. That reminds us of a line in Saddarshanam of Sri Ramana Maharshi. Chitre tralokyancha vilokita cha pata prakashopi abhavatsa ekaha. He says, there is a painting on a canvas. Ordinarily, when you go for an art exhibition and see a painting on a canvas, you are not the canvas, canvas is not you, the light that illumines the painting and you is not you, not canvas, they are different. But Chitre Atra, in this picture, he is referring to the entire creation. In this entire creation, the wonder of wonders is what you see, the one who sees, the light in which one sees, the canvas, the painting, all of them, abhavat sa ekaha, one alone is. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.